Welcome to the second part of International Project Management section. In this lesson, we are going to look at the biggest challenge in this type of projects, the cultural differences. The reason why cultural differences are so important is because as a project manager of an international project, it is mandatory that you understand the cultural differences of each country. Cultural differences can greatly influence on international project and require a specific approach to solve these challenges. As a project manager delivering an international project, it is necessary that you consider these cultural and social differences between the countries that are taking part in the project. This will give you better understanding in order to reduce the risk of failure and reduce the costs. In order to provide the students with a framework of understanding, this course is going to be focused on Hofstede dimensional tool. We are going to look at 5 key areas of cultural differences, and as a final review, we will look at a real example between the two different cultures. Hofstede divides cultural differences in 5 sections that are called cultural dimensions. This model allows you to analyze 2 or more different countries. The 5 sections that constitute such model are power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term orientation. Each of them are scored on a scale of 0 to 120. We'll analyze now each of them separately in order to understand what this score means for each culture, but before, I would like you to watch the following video to digest all the information that you have been provided. After the video that you could watch in the slides, we are going to start analyzing the power distance index. This dimension determines the degree of acceptance that members of society with less power have in terms of power distributed inequality. Some societies handle inequalities different than others and have less tolerance to it. Societies with a large degree of power distance tend to assume that everybody has a place in the society that needs no justification. By contrast, in countries with a low power distance index, people try to distribute power more equally and they demand justifications for inequalities of power. We are now going to look at the section that relates individualism and collectivism. This section represents the social framework in which each individual are supposed to look after only themselves and their immediate family, or, by contrast, of a group of members with unquestionable loyalty. The first one is referred to individualism and the second to collectivism. Societies with a higher score in this dimension tend to be more individualist than those with low score. The third dimension is related to masculinity and femininity. Low score in this section means that society rewards achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material reward for success. By contrast, femininity means that society prefers modesty and cooperation, caring for the weak. In terms of uncertainty avoidance, this represents the degree to which the society feels uncomfortable with ambiguity and risks. Societies with a high level of this dimension tend to be more conservative, while those with a low level are more willing to take risks and feel more comfortable with uncertainty. The last dimension is related to time orientation in projects. Those societies with low score tend to be more conservative and maintain time-honored traditions, while a high score means that society is more pragmatic and has a short-term orientation. As you can see, cultural differences and Hofstede dimensions are closely related. Cultural differences add complexity to the projects, at least more than the domestic ones. For that reason, A good manager in an international project has to understand the different cultures involved in the project in order to take the right decisions and reduce the risk of failure. Now, as a review of which I have just seen, we are going to look at the real example of Hofstede 5 dimensions. This graph compares two different societies, the Argentina and the United Kingdom. We are going to analyze the 5 dimensions separately. In terms of power distance, Argentina is more willing to accept hierarchy and distribution of power than the UK. However, both have low score and therefore they tend to equalize the distribution of power. Talking about individualism, the UK tends to be more individualistic, and that means that they tend to look after themselves and their close relatives rather than other members of society. The grade of masculinity seems to be similar for both, with a low score, which means that both tend to be tendered and therefore prefer cooperation and modesty. In terms of uncertainty avoidance, Argentine society have a high score, and therefore they tend to feel uncomfortable and avoid situations that carry risks. UK has a low score, and therefore they feel comfortable and look for innovations and progressions to do not feel comfortless in risk situations. The last dimension is the time orientation. As you can see, Argentina has a pure score. That means that they tend to think in a long-term basis. By contrast, the UK tend to think in a short-term basis. As an example, Argentina society tend to be more conservative than the British one. All of these factors have to be taken into account when it comes to deal with members of both societies. Studying their behavior will give you a better understanding and will help you to approach better difficult situations. This is the end of this lecture. Hope you have got all the contents. However, in order to settle down all the knowledge, you have access to self-study material that will help you, and if you still have hesitations, you can also check references in order to expand your knowledge.